Welcome to the D Shift podcast, where we provide inspiration, motivation, and education to help you transition from the challenges of divorce to discover the freedom and ability to live life on your own terms. Are you ready? Let's get this shift started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the D Shift podcast. And today I am really excited to have a person on the podcast who is, I think, providing an essential service to help women or men manage transition points in their life. So I'd like to introduce you to Eric Shepard. He is the leader of the Foundation for Talent Transformation. It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization that provides apps and free, write that down, free online assessments to help people thrive personally, professionally, socially, and economically. Eric, welcome, and thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you so much, Mardi. It's a pleasure to be here, and hope we can help your audience.
Well, you certainly can, because I'm going to put a shameless plug in right now. I've been on your site. I've done some of the assessments. I think they're fantastic, and I have sent some of my clients there already. So, Eric, this is a really unique thing, because a lot of assessments are very costly. I mean, I do some assessments for people, and I give them away for free. So tell us a little bit about how you got started in this and why this is important for you to provide this service.
Well, how I got started is that I was the CEO of an assessment company, and we were focused on assessing skills and abilities rather than behaviors and personality. But I always had this fascination. And about 4 years ago, I stepped down from that leadership role, stepped down from being CEO. It was about a 150-person company. But I stepped down because I really wanted to do something else with my life. I've been running the company for 25 years. I'd understood a lot. So I first started by writing a book, just so I could kind of empty the last chapter into a book, and then I could look forward. And part of that writing the book, I thought, I need to do some more assessments about myself. I need to reevaluate where I am and what I could be and where am I going, because it's a big transition. When I was the CEO, I was doing 300 nights a year in hotels. I was traveling a lot, taking a lot of intense pressure. And so it was a time to reevaluate. I did some certifications, I did some assessments, and in the book, I was able to articulate the differences between behaviors and how you can learn to provide psychologically safe environments. How can you learn to be emotionally intelligent, all those kind of things. So, and the book was really targeted for CEOs and HR and learning and development to help them understand the distinctions between the various assessments.
Okay.
But that exercise of evaluating myself in order to look to the future, and that exercise of preparing for the book, helped me realize how powerful these would be for everybody. And I'd spent a lot of money on taking all these assessments. And I realized we were just going into COVID at this time, that we knew that technology was going to replace a lot of the jobs that were pre-COVID. We knew, for instance, that video conferencing was going to be much more prevalent. We knew that AI was coming to replace jobs. We knew robotics was coming to replace jobs. So there was a risk that there'd be a large set of our population that wouldn't have work to go to, or not certainly the work they'd enjoyed in the past, and they would have to use new skills around communications, collaboration, cooperation. So in the third industrial revolution, we had people sitting on a production line doing simple tasks repetitively for many hours. In the fourth industrial revolution that we're coming to, we've got to be more human. We've got to do more thinking, because we're not just going to sit in front of a computer moving stuff from the inbox to the outbox or sitting on a production line. So we have to cooperate. We have to collaborate. Another issue that we were raising was that people are going to become more specialist, because this technology is very complex. So we're going to have the specialist roles which means we then need to collaborate in teams. What
Sure.
do teams need? They need cooperation, collaboration, etc. So we said, well, let's help people develop these skills, which we call transformational skills. They are social and emotional skills. So it's kind of how do we get through an emotional crisis? How do we deal with emotional issues? How do we learn about ourselves and others? Not only to help our own relationships and our future relationships, but also to be better prepared for the new world of work. So that was kind of the background. I'm sorry if that was kind of long and complex.
No, it was
Um,
interesting. It was interesting. It's always so interesting to see how where people take their inspiration from. So that was great background.
that's great. I'm glad you appreciated it. From that, we started by writing articles, and I felt we were just howling in the wind. And we said we have to get something that really engages someone, engages their cognitive system. So we developed our first quiz, which was the career interest quiz. And we started seeing building traffic, building usage. We started getting very positive reviews. So we said, this is interesting. Let's do another one. Let's do personal values. Because when you're evaluating your life, understanding your values, kind of looking in the mirror, but an objective mirror to understand our values. And then that started doing very well. So personality traits, emotional intelligence. We now have about 16 assessments. And it's a bit like a buffet that you can just kind of browse through and work out which one captures your interests and then take that one. So now we have more than 1,000 people a day taking these assessments, deriving value from the reports.
And like I said, I have done a couple of them. And so it's really interesting because the language, the results that you get from the assessments or the quizzes is really actionable stuff. It's not this like airy fairy horoscope woo woo stuff, which there's nothing wrong with that either, but it's very, very specific. At least the quizzes I did were very specific about this. Okay, this is something that you can do, or this is a positive trait that you can use moving forward. Talk a little bit about how you what was the expectation when people finished those quizzes? Like what did you want them to walk away with after completing them?
Well, firstly, let me say, Marty, I'm really happy that you got that experience from the reports. Now, there was one point after I'd finished writing the book that somebody said to me, and they were being very kind and generous, although the way I'll express it may not sound kind and generous. They said, this is intellectually interesting, but not actionable. And they were absolutely right. I was doing work that was intellectually interesting and but not actionable. And I wanted stuff to be actionable. So people could read it. And it's kind of a fine line. You don't want to tell people what to do, but you do want to provide the potential actions that they might take. Because if you're evaluating your values, for instance, okay, but what does that mean? What does that, you want to give people insights into that so they can pick up that chapter or that part of their journey and move on.
Mhm.
So yes, we've deliberately written the reports to be actionable. We've also written them so that they're, of course, all AI driven based on all of the questions that you answer. We produce some algorithms and calculations to provide you the right report based on thousands of people taking these quizzes. The other difference is we didn't want it have to be totally interpreted by a coach. We wanted people to be able to do it with themselves. Now, a lot of coaches, a lot of schools and colleges are now using these in their work because it provides insights to the individual. So just answering the questions provide insights, reading the report provides insights, and it might just stop there. But some people say, but you know what? I need a little helping hand. And at that point, they can turn to a coach. In a school or college environment where people are in big transitions, they're moving away from being looked after by their family to moving into a career.
Mhm.
There's a big life transition going on in normally about 5 years. And so schools are picking up on these assessments to help people understand what those transitions are going to feel like.
And you know, it's interesting you said that, because that's the one particular assessment that I told my clients, do the values one, because I
Mhm.
talk a lot about when you're going through a divorce, you need to know your values. You need to stay true to your values throughout the process so that you don't walk out the other side and feel terrible about what happened. You know, you want to feel like you honored what you believe in when you're moving through your divorce and moving forward in your life. So I want to support or encourage people that although there are a lot of the assessments are specific to finding new jobs or making a job transition, or where do you want to kind of, what do you want to do when you grow up, kind of assessments, there's also these ones that deal with your emotional health and just general communication and relationships as well. Is that right, Eric?
Oh, that's 1,000% right. Thank you for highlighting that, Marty. Marty, the thing is, when uh, not having gone through a difficult divorce myself, although I've been in a number of relationships, decade relationships that have ceased, so I understand the transition
It's all the
of that.
same. Yeah.
And and I got to a point, someone explained to me the idea of serial monogamy, that physically we're not, potentially we're not able to be in a relationship all our lives. Now, my parents were lucky that they were. You know, they met at 19 and they passed in their 80s. But that's, I think, now going to be the exception rather than norm. So
Hmm.
we have to learn how to deal with these life transitions, and part of it is a reflection of the past. And I'm sure you're more of an expert on this than I am, so I'm not going to talk to that. But there is the idea of kind of closing the chapter. You know, I did everything I could. It didn't work out, but that's biologically we're not going to stay. We grow together, we grow apart. You know, let's just accept that. Now, when we've accepted that, it's what are we going to do in the future? Okay, and now you're going to rediscover the new self because you've grown and you've grown inside a relationship, but now you're outside the relationship. So you have to discover who you've become and maybe make some tweaks about someone that you want to become, you know. So going through these kind of assessments, sorry, I see you want to jump in, but taking some of these assessments help you introspect and it helps you reflect in a way that maybe not possible if you were just sitting on your own or you were just talking to your friends. Friends might know you from who you were, but you're actually transitioning to a new person. So it's worth having kind of these assessments help you reflect.
And that's what you kind of finished what I was going to ask about, but that is so true, is that um, your friends often know things about you that they know they won't talk to you about because they don't want to hurt your feelings.
That's,
They don't want to seem like they're being critical. And
yeah,
I think that's one of the values of having a coach is they do hold up that mirror and they do reflect it back in a
yes,
way that allows you to, you don't have to accept anything and you don't have to accept what the assessments say either. I mean, you can do an assessment. So I am trained in emotional intelligence, EQI 2.0. I've done the EQI 2.0 with people that have paid a lot of money to get one done. And they'll say, well, that's fine, but I don't think those reports are accurate.
hmm,
So you can take what you want from the assessments, but I really do think that having that ability to have that um, neutral, unbiased, no agenda document is really helpful. And can you talk a little bit about the format of the assessments? Like, are they all multiple choice or choose or scale, or how do the assessments, like, how do you ever have to enter personal information into the assessments?
um, so the first part of the question, they're essentially multiple choice, but these kind of assessments, there's something, I think it's called the social bias, is that if you ask a multiple choice question to say strongly agree through strongly agree, and you ask a question like, are you a nice person? Well, most people are going to say, I strongly agree with that.
Right.
So what we have is what they call a forced choice. So there's two statements that I'm a nice person, I love my friends. Now, that's not a question, but you have to choose between them. Am I more likely to say I'd love my friends, or am I more likely to say, now the mathematics in the background is determining, oh, this is exhibiting a trait of neuroticism or a trait of insecurity or whatever it is. So that's the assessment normally has about 50 questions in. Some are as few as 10 questions. One of our latest assessments has 100 questions, but that's for talents assessment rather than strength or talents assessments rather than things like emotional intelligence. So we try and get all of the people can answer the quizzes within 10 minutes. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 15 minutes. But it's been tuned to be very quick to answer because we all know that answering a multiple choice system can be kind of frustrating. So we want to make it easy and add some little visual elements to make it stimulating.
Yeah,
Um,
they're fun to do. The quizzes are fun to do, and there's nothing. I mean, the ones that I did were, uh, I just felt the questions were very streamlined to the particular assessment. And like you said, they really provide the reports are fantastic. They do provide those insights, and they just help you take a big picture look at whatever specific category you're doing the assessment in. Is there any one, or there are there specific assessments, because you know all of them that are on there, that you would recommend for people that are going through a life transition like a divorce? Are there any that kind of stick out for you as ones that you would say this might be one you want to take?
we've spoken about values, so that's a good one. Personality traits. It's one that's been around for a long time, and it deals with openness and conscientiousness, introvert, extrovert, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So it's useful to have a little reflection on that.
Mhm.
I think it's more about understanding yourself rather than understanding others. There's communication styles. So when other people communicate, you can go, oh, look, they're doing that thing, So it isn't kind of taking it personally. You can kind of be a little more generous the way other people might communicate. The life satisfaction is a nice one. That deals with four dimensions of life satisfaction. We deal with well-being in six dimensions of well-being. So, but the life satisfaction deals with four of those. So, being self-aware is part of well-being and satisfaction. You're having healthy relationships with others. And I think as you're going through a divorce or you've finished a divorce, then you can get a little concerned that you have the ability to form healthy relationships. And the
Yes.
thing is, you can, but so just to reflect on healthy relationships is a good idea. A bit off topic, but also the idea of being grateful because it is a new chapter. It is a way. So, having grateful exercises of appreciation once a day, just be grateful for three things. Um, Fitness and health, and that doesn't mean, running a marathon every other day, but it does mean diet, sleep, exercises. Don't sit in front of Netflix eating chips all night because that's not going to help you feel better about your life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
diet, sleep, sometimes people that are stressed, they'll have to manage their sleep more carefully. Exercise, it really makes a difference. Even 20 minutes a day, taking a brisk walk, or if you can do more, do more. I'm sure some of your audience are great at fitness. It was something I had to work on, but
Yeah.
diet, sleep, exercise, the basics. And then, of course, you've got a fulfilling career. So part of the divorce might be that your career has been turned upside down. Maybe you have to go and find a job, or maybe you relocate and have to get a job. All of those things. So career interests and talent. But yeah, going back to the top ones, life satisfaction, career, personality traits, personal values. If there's a number of short ones about cognitive biases that are interesting, and with all of the reports, we try and help people understand themselves, but we also help them understand others. So we
Hmm.
might say, in very simple terms, you're an introvert. And that means this. But there are some people out there who are extroverts. And so this is how you might want to think about dealing with extroverts or vice versa. I'm just using those simple ones.
Sure.
So then people don't make the assumption that everybody should be like me, because they're not like you and they're not going to be like you. And that's what makes us a human race. And that's what makes life so stimulating. If we're all the same, it wouldn't be any fun.
Right. And that's one thing. It's funny when you said that, because I think we all love doing assessments, especially when they're about us, because I think we are our own favorite topic. But I also think that we we have to be open to the fact that how we see ourselves and the internal story we tell ourselves about what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it and what kind of person we are is not really what other people are seeing necessarily. So I love the idea of becoming more aware of what's going on that you may not even be really realizing. Especially the values one. I'm going to go back to that because I have lots of people that do a values assessment that's not nearly as structured or formalized as an assessment, and they go, I didn't realize that, say, honesty as important to me as it is,
Mm-hmm.
and now I notice in the divorce I'm not necessarily being completely honest with my partner. And so that's where that, or my soon to be ex partner, and that's where that disconnect starts coming and people
Mm-hmm.
start feeling uncomfortable. So, and I want to stress again that the reason that Eric is offering or is here talking to this about is he is offering all these assessments. There is no charge for them. They are free. You can go online, you can take all of them, you can take them multiple times. You don't have to sign up or buy. There is nothing to buy. As a matter of fact, you can just sign up and take them. And so I think that alone is such a gift for people.
Well, thanks for recognizing that. I did, if you wouldn't mind, just go back to one thing about how other people see us and how we are internally, so how we think we are. There's another dimension to that, is that we play different personas depending on the environment that we're in.
Sure.
So recognizing that, saying, oh, look, this is how I'm behaving is kind of useful. So if you were to go to a fine dining restaurant, you'd be different than if you went into a place of exercise, the gym to exercise, or you were entertaining friends at home. And I suspect that when people are sitting in a very unfamiliar place, like a lawyer's office with their soon-to-be ex-partner, there's a lot of stress,
Mhm.
and they will put on a persona that may be helpful or maybe not helpful. So actually practicing the personas that would be helpful because it's a high stress situation
Right.
is so you can kind of modify your persona even though you're sticking to your core values.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really key point. And that's something, again, when I work with my clients and prepare them for mediation and negotiation, we talk about that, game face.
Oh,
What
yes,
when is it good to show your emotions? When do you need to kind of keep them in check as you're going
yes,
through the negotiation process? So
yeah.
Eric, you have shared a ton of information, and I think we could talk a lot about this because I know we've talked before and we're both kind of passionate about doing these assessments and getting to know more about ourselves. But what do you think is the one thing you'd like people to remember when they go on about their busy days?
In the context of someone going through a divorce, I think it's worth thinking that they're closing a chapter. It had its good moments, it probably ending with some bad moments, but there's a new life ahead of them. And to enjoy that new life, just learn to understand themselves, learn a little bit more about themselves, learn about their relationships, what works for them, what doesn't work for them. That's why these assessments are out there. Help them understand their emotional intelligence, their values, their interests. So it's not the end, it's the beginning.
Thank you. And that's such a positive message to end this on as well. And Eric, if people do want to take the assessments, how do they get to the website? What's the website you want them to head on over to check these out?
It's sure, www.talenttransformation.com. And at the top, there's very few menu options. One of the menu options is helpful quizzes. And although you don't need to sign up, you could go through completely anonymously and take the quiz and get the report. It's useful to sign up with your a username and password, because then you can go back and the system would just store the reports. You could reflect on them later. But if for whatever reason you want to go through anonymously, you can. Talenttransformation.com, go to helpful quizzes and pick the one that works for you.
Great. And I'm going to encourage everybody, head on over there and check this out. And if you know other people that are going through life transitions, changing their careers, looking for a job, trying to figure out what they want to do next, share this information with them because it really is helpful. And Eric, again, thank you so much for being here and sharing this valuable resource with the listeners. And I want to encourage everybody to, like I said, head on over and check it out. And don't forget to tune in next Tuesday for another episode of the D-Shift Podcast. Thanks for listening and supporting the D-Shift Podcast. If you would like to attend live trainings by our amazing guests and have a chance to ask questions and get answers from our experts, join the D-Shift crew. For more details and to sign up, head on over to www.divorcecoachforwomen and click on the podcast page.